My name is Nora Bennett. I am a waitress on the night shift. The coffee tray in my left hand was heavy. The tremor in my right was worse. It was always worse after midnight. I watched the dark liquid slosh in the thick ceramic mug, tiny waves hitting the rim, threatening to spill. Just breathe. Nora, keep the wrist straight. I navigated the narrow aisle of the diner, a place open 24/7 in Boston's North End. The air was thick tonight, a heavy blanket of old cooking grease, stale sugar, and the damp wool smell of patrons who had just come from the Red Sox game. They were loud, energized by the win, their voices echoing off the tiled floors. My job was just to deliver the coffee without making a mess, a simple task, unless your own nerves are betraying you. I reached the booth in the back. A group of 4 men, all younger than me, probably still in college. They were the new breed of tourist, the kind who came to the North End looking for movie stereotypes and left disappointed by the good pasta. One of them had his phone out, already filming. I hated that. They were laughing at something on his screen. And as I leaned in to set the mug down, a different man, older and smelling of cheap whiskey, grabbed the front of my apron. He did not just touch it. He yanked it, hard. The tray wobbled, the coffee mug crashed down, shattering. Hot liquid splashed across the table and onto my arm. The diner went silent. It was the kind of silence that happens in an instant, a vacuum where the shouting and the clatter of forks used to be. Every eye turned. The college kids in the booth. Their phones were up, all 4 of them, pointed right at me, filming my humiliation as the drunk man grinned. Still holding a fistful of my apron string, he tugged again. "Where is my pie, sweet cheeks?" he slurred. No one moved. Not the cook at the grill, not the regulars at the counter, not the college kids. They just watched. They just filmed. My face burned hot, hotter than the coffee sting on my skin. Then, a chair scraped against the floor. The sound was deafening in the silence. A man stood up from a booth near the door. He had been sitting alone, reading a newspaper. I had not even registered him. He was not dressed for this diner. He wore a dark wool coat, soft and expensive, over a simple sweater. He looked like old money, the kind that built the libraries in this city, not the kind that frequented late-night diners. He was tall, but he did not move quickly. He moved with intention. He walked toward our booth, his eyes calm, almost placid. They were dark, and they were fixed entirely on the drunk man's hand, the one still clutching my apron. He stopped. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply spoke, his voice low and clear, cutting through the heavy air. "Let go." The drunk, emboldened by his audience of cell phones, laughed. "Or what, pretty boy?" He let go of my apron, but only to shove me backward, trying to get to the man who had interrupted him. And then the world shifted. The drunk's hand went to his pocket. There was a sharp click. A blade, probably only 3 inches long, sprung free. A cheap switchblade. It glittered under the harsh fluorescent lights. The college kids gasped, but their phones did not waver. Luca Moretti, though I did not know his name then, did not step back. He stepped forward. He moved directly between me and the knife. It was fast. The drunk lunged, clumsy and sloppy. Luca shifted, turning his shoulder, but he was not fast enough to avoid it completely. The blade caught his outer arm, slicing through the fine wool of his coat and the shirt beneath. It was not a deep cut, but it was immediate, and it was bloody. A dark line of red instantly soaked his sleeve. He did not even grunt. He just looked down at his arm, almost annoyed. That is when my tremor stopped. It happens sometimes. When the adrenaline hits a certain peak, the shaking vanishes, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. It was the same focus I used to need for the violin, back when that was my life. The man with the knife was preparing for another lunge. I did not think I acted. I grabbed the heavy glass ketchup bottle from the table. I swung it not at his head, but at his wrist. The bottle connected with a wet, heavy crack of bone. The knife clattered to the floor. The drunk howled, clutching his hand. While he was distracted by the pain, I grabbed the back of his greasy hair with one hand and his collar with the other. I slammed his face down onto the Formica tabletop. His nose hit the scattered sugar packets. "Stay down," I ordered. My hands were steady, completely steady. Luca Moretti was looking at me, his calm expression broken by a flicker of genuine surprise. He was bleeding. I turned to the next table, the one where the college kids were still filming. I ripped the cheap checkered tablecloth right off it, sending their water glasses crashing. "Sorry," I snapped, already moving back to Luca. I bunched the fabric. "Press this," I said, hard, against the wound. He took it, his gaze never leaving my face. "You have done this before," he observed. "I have worked in the North End for 5 years," I said. "You learn first aid." The patrons were just staring, filming the blood, filming the man groaning into the tabletop, filming me. We heard the sirens then, finally. Someone must have called 911. They sounded far away, winding through the narrow streets of the North End. They were in no hurry. Luca looked toward the door, then back at the drunk, who I was still holding down with one hand on his neck. "You can let him go," Luca said. "He is finished." I released my grip. The man just whimpered. Luca walked to the front counter, the bloody tablecloth still pressed to his arm. He pulled a wallet from his coat. He placed several large bills on the counter. "This covers everyone," he said to the stunned cook, "and the damage." He started for the door just as the police were pulling up. He paused beside me. The sirens were loud now, washing the diner in red and blue light. "Thank you for the assistance, si," he said. Formal. "He cut you," I said, stating the obvious. "He did." He looked around the diner, at the patrons who were now lowering their phones, suddenly aware they were witnesses. No one else dared to help you, so I had to stand up first. He did not wait for the police. He simply walked out into the night. The police took my statement. They took the drunk man. They took the statements of the college kids, who eagerly showed their footage. I just wanted to wash my hands. When they finally let me go to the back, I turned on the hot water in the utility sink, scrubbing the sticky residue of coffee and the faint, metallic smell of blood off my skin. And my hands were shaking again. The tremor was back, violent this time, a reaction to the adrenaline fading. "He's gone." I jumped. Luca Moretti was standing in the doorway of the staff room. He must have circled the block and come in the back entrance. He was watching my hands under the water. "You are shaking," he said. "It was not an accusation. It was an observation." I turned off the water, grabbing a rough paper towel. "It is the tremor." He stepped further into the room. He had a clean, pressed handkerchief now tied expertly around his arm. The wool coat was ruined. "Congenital," he asked, "or because you were afraid?" It was such a specific question. I looked him in the eye. "Congenital. It is called essential tremor, but I can still pour a straight cup of coffee." I held out my right hand. It was vibrating, a fine, high-frequency buzz. "See, but the cup gets to the table." He watched my hand for a long moment. The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely. It was not quite a smile. It was more like an acknowledgement. "I see that," he said. He reached into his coat, the one that was not damaged, and pulled out a simple, heavy cardstock business card. He offered it to me. I dried my hands before I took it. The card was stark white. The lettering was simple black engraving, Moretti Group, and underneath, Community Fund. There was a name, Luca Moretti, and a phone number. "Community Fund," I asked. "We help organize local events," he said, his voice smooth. "If the police give you any trouble, or the diner." "I can handle the police," I said, perhaps too quickly. "I am sure you can," he replied. He nodded once, a gesture of respect, and then he was gone, disappearing out the back alley door. I stared at the card. Moretti. I knew that name. Everyone in the North End knew that name. It was not associated with organizing local events. I slid the card into the pocket of my jeans. the fabric still damp. My hand was still shaking. I told myself, standing in the quiet of the staff room with the smell of old bleach and new blood, that I would never call that number. I would throw the card away as soon as I got home. I knew, even then, that I was lying. I finished my shift at 4 in the morning. My shift replacement, a girl half my age named Maria, glanced at the broken mug I was sweeping up and said nothing, which was its own kind of kindness. The tremor was a dull, constant hum in my bones now, the adrenaline long gone, leaving only exhaustion. I tucked the business card into my locker, hiding it beneath a spare, clean apron, and stepped out into the pre-dawn chill. I walked home through the quiet streets. The North End was asleep. The smells of garlic and yeast from the bakeries were resting. I lived 3 blocks from the diner, in a 3rd-floor walk-up that is too small and costs too much. I am 29 years old. My life is not the one I ordered. It is a mosaic built from broken pieces. 2 jobs, 1 son, and absolutely zero margin for error. My first job is the diner, the night shift. It pays the bills. My second job, a part-time position 3 afternoons a week, is at a women's shelter in Somerville. That one is for the soul. It does not pay much, but it keeps me anchored. It was not always this way. I used to be a different Nora, a Nora who had a scholarship to the New England Conservatory, a violin major. My hands were my gift. They were my entire identity. They knew the fingerboard. They knew the tension of the bow. They knew how to make horsehair and wood sing. Then, around age 21, the gift shattered. The shaking started. It was not stage fright. It was a persistent neurological vibration. My instructors called it nerves. My doctor, after many tests, gave it a name, essential tremor. He told me it was benign, which is a word doctors use when something is not killing you, even if it is destroying your life. It was a thief. It stole my music. It stole my scholarship. It stole the future I had spent my entire life building. So, I learned to carry coffee. I learned to balance heavy trays by bracing them against my hip. I learned to live with the savage irony of hands that could no longer play a Paganini concerto, but could deliver a 3-egg special and 3 coffees during the breakfast rush, most of the time without spilling. The most important piece of my life, the only piece that truly matters, is Leo. He is 7 years old. He was fast asleep when I got home. The blankets kicked off, his breathing soft in the small bedroom we share. I stood in the doorway watching him. He's brilliant. He's obsessed with science, knows more about astrophysics than I ever will. He builds nebulae out of cotton balls and glitter glue and tapes them to our ceiling. He is my center of gravity. And he is the reason I am so terrified. Evan Carter, my ex-husband, has recently found stability. That is the word he uses in his emails. It is a clean, sharp, corporate word. Evan likes clean, sharp things. He's an investment banker now, living in a sterile glass tower in the seaport. He left when Leo was 2, back when my hands were shaking too much to hold a bow and my diner tips were not making enough money to hold his interest. Now he is back. He wants to share custody. No, that is not true. He wants full custody. He sends polite, cutting emails about stable environments and predictable futures, and positive male role models. He means my tremor. He means my 2 jobs. He means the fact that I am not him. This city, Boston, is not an easy place to be unstable. It is a city of brutal contrasts. The North End, where I live, is cramped, all old brick and narrow cobblestone sidewalks, smelling of history and sauce. Then there is the seaport, where Evan lives, all new glass and sharp wind and the raw, salty air off the harbor. The tea rumbles beneath our feet, the green line screeching, the orange line rattling the foundations. This city is a symphony, just not the one I was trained for. It is dissonant and loud, and sometimes beautiful, and it does not forgive weakness. That morning, after the diner, I could not sleep. The name on that card felt like a stone in my gut. Moretti. I did what anyone in the 21st century does. I sat at my small kitchen table, the sun just starting to lighten the sky, and I Googled him. Luca Moretti. The search results were polished, spotless. He was the public face of the Moretti Group. He was the chairman of the Moretti Community Fund. There were dozens of photos of him shaking hands with the mayor, cutting ribbons for new youth centers, handing out oversized checks to local charities. It was all very clean, very philanthropic. But I have worked in the North End for 5 years. I hear the whispers in the diner, the ones that stop when a police officer walks in. The Moretti family, they are the North End's unofficial landlords, its unseen bankers, its quiet arbiters. The community fund was a very nice, very legal umbrella, but what it covered, that was the real story. I kept scrolling. Past the press releases, I found one small article from a society page, buried on page 6 of the Boston Globe's digital archive. It was a piece about an annual gala for Parkinson's research. Luca Moretti was the event chair. His mother, Teresa Moretti, was the honoree. The article said, a long-time sufferer of the disease. I stopped. I looked down at my own right hand, resting on the table, and it was vibrating. A fine, steady hum in the morning light. Congenital, or because you were afraid? He had not asked if I was nervous. He had not asked if I was scared. He had asked if it was a tremor. He knew the difference. He had seen that specific kind of involuntary vibration his entire life, in his own mother. That is why he stood up. It was not just chivalry, it was recognition. Somehow, that made it worse. It made the debt feel personal, heavier. My life is complicated enough without adding organized crime to the mix. I have Evan, and I have the police. 2 detectives have been my shadows for the past month. Detective Hale and Detective Sun. They are, they say, investigating the Moretti organization. Because my diner is in the heart of their territory. They see it as a potential listening post. They are a classic pair. Hale is older, rumpled, smells faintly of stale coffee and peppermint. He tries to be the friendly uncle, asking about my son. Sun is younger, sharp, impeccably dressed, and her eyes miss nothing. She does not smile. They just want to talk. They appreciate my cooperation. Their words are always soft, but the pressure is very real. They want to know who eats where, who talks to whom, what time they arrive. I always say the same thing. I just serve the coffee. I do not listen to the conversations. They do not believe me. Then there are the men I see with Moretti, or, more accurately, near him, the ones who do not show up in the Google search. There is the one they call Adriano Russo, and he's older than Luca, always in a perfect suit, and he looks more like a college professor or a classical conductor than a gangster. He's quiet, refined, and he carries a single, very expensive fountain pen. He has a habit. He taps it, a quiet, restless rhythm against his briefcase, against the table, against his own thumbnail. 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, 2, 3, pause, a nervous energy under a controlled surface. And then there is the other one, Rafe Conti. He's the opposite of Adriano. He's young, restless, handsome, and wears his designer suits too tight, like he's trying to burst out of them. He looks like he is always one bad comment away from throwing a punch. He watches Luca with a burning intensity. He wants to be him. He wants to be where he is. He wants it so badly you can smell the ambition on him, sharp and dangerous. I have a mantra, a code I live by. Keep my head down, keep my hands as steady as I possibly can, keep Leo safe. This is Boston. In this city, kindness always has to be proven with a receipt. If you cannot show the receipt, people do not call it kindness. They call it debt. And I had just accepted a very large, very unreceipted favor from Luca Moretti. I slept for maybe 2 hours, the sun high and bright outside my window. I woke up at 10 in the morning to the sound of Leo stirring. I had to get him ready for school. I turned on the kettle for instant coffee and checked my email while I waited for the water to boil. There it was, an automated notification from the Suffolk County Family Court. My stomach dissolved. My heart did a sick, cold flip. It was an emergency motion, filed by Evan Carter. I clicked the attachment. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse pad. I scanned the dense legal language. Unstable living environment. Exposure to violence. Endangerment of a minor. Petitioner's untreated neurological condition. And then I saw it. A single paragraph in his sworn affidavit. My concerns for my son's safety were tragically confirmed on the night of October 28th, when the petitioner, Nora Bennett, was involved in a violent public altercation at her place of employment. This incident involved a known organized crime figure, Mr. Luca Moretti, and resulted in an assault with a deadly weapon on the premises. My blood went cold. How did he know the police report had not even been filed yet? I was there. Someone had leaked it. Someone had filmed it and sent it straight to my ex-husband's expensive lawyer. The college kids, the phones, pointed at me. Or someone else. The name Moretti stared at me from the legal document, an accusation. Evan was using the incident. He was using the one man who had helped me as a weapon to take my son away. The kettle on the stove began to scream, a high-pitched piercing wail that filled my tiny apartment. I could not move to turn it off. I just stared at the screen. The tremor in my hands so violent it hurt. I got Leo ready for school, my hands moving with a forced, jerky steadiness. I had not slept. The image of Evan's emergency motion, the words organized crime and Luca Moretti burned into my memory. I plastered a smile on my face. I packed his lunch, my fingers fumbling with the zipper on the insulated bag. I dropped it. "Oops," Leo said, bending to pick it up. "It is okay, Mommy. Your hands are just being silly today." His innocence was a physical pain, a sharp pressure behind my ribs. I kissed him goodbye at the school gate and watched him run to his friends. Then I spent the morning calling lawyers, legal aid, pro bono clinics, anyone who would listen. The response was the same. An emergency motion citing violence and organized crime was catastrophic. My tremor, my job, my low income. It was a perfect storm, and Evan's expensive new lawyer was steering it right at me. I went to my shift at the diner that night. I had to. The bills would not wait. I felt like I was moving underwater. Every order a monumental effort. My tremor was bad, a constant, visible vibration that made the customers look at me with pity or impatience. I was in the back alley just after 10, hauling a heavy bag of trash to the dumpster. The air was cold and smelled of stale beer from the bar next door. Miss Bennett. I spun around. Detectives Hale and Son were leaning against their unmarked sedan, parked in the shadows. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Working hard, Nora," Hale said. He had his disappointed uncle expression on. "We admire a hard worker." Son said nothing. She was holding a styrofoam coffee cup, watching me. "Detectives," I said, my voice tight. "I already gave my statement." "You did," Hale agreed, pushing himself off the car. "But your statement was thin, very thin. You left out some key details, like your private meeting with Mr. Moretti in the staff room after the police left." My blood went cold. He was a customer. He was injured. "He was a customer who got stabbed for you," Son said, her voice sharp and flat. "A customer who then paid for the entire diner's tabs. A customer who you seem to have a very cozy relationship with. We saw the other footage. Nora, the clips the college kids did not post, the ones from the diner's own security camera. I do not have a relationship with him." "We think you do," Hale said, his friendly tone gone. "Luca Moretti is our target. He's the subject of multiple state and federal investigations. And you, Nora, are now a person of interest right alongside him." "That is ridiculous," I whispered. "Is it?" Son stepped forward into the weak circle of light from the alley lamp. "Here is what is ridiculous. You are a single mother with an untreated neurological condition. You work 2 jobs to make ends meet. You are already in a precarious position, and now you are visibly, publicly, associating with the head of the Moretti crime family. He helped me. He compromised you, Hale snapped. And now your ex-husband knows all about it. I stopped breathing. You told him. Hale shrugged. We did not have to. The system is full of leaks when the Moretti name is involved, but we can fix it, or, more accurately, you can. I knew what was coming. Cooperate, Hale said, the word hanging in the cold air. Tell us what you really talked about in that back room. Be our eyes and ears in this diner. You see who comes in. You hear what they say. We want to know. And if I do not... Hale's face hardened. Think about your son, Leo. A judge is looking at that emergency motion right now. If a detective or two were to add their official concerns to that file. If we were to testify that you are a material witness in a major felony investigation and that you are uncooperative, well, that judge is not going to rule in your favor. He's going to give that boy to his stable, wealthy father. It was a punch to the gut. That is blackmail. That, Son said, crushing the coffee cup in her hand, is a custody hearing. Cooperate, Nora, or you will lose your son. I could not breathe. I could not think. I somehow finished my shift. My hands shook so badly I dropped 2 plates. My boss, seeing I was a wreck, sent me home an hour early. I was walking the 3 blocks to my apartment, the streets dark and empty. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I fumbled for it. A text from Evan. Nora, my lawyer just showed me the video from the diner. It is all over the internet. You, him, the fight. It is worse than I thought. The lawyer says this is definitive. Just agree to the terms. Nora, it is better for Leo. My stomach twisted. All over the internet, he was using a viral video to steal my son. Before I could even process it, the phone vibrated again. A new number. Unknown. The text was short, just 1 sentence. If you need anything, call. Protection is not a yoke. Luca. He must have known about the motion. He knew they were squeezing me. A yoke. The heavy wooden bar used to chain an ox to a plow. He was telling me his help was not a chain. I stared at the 2 messages. One from the man I used to love. One from a man I did not even know. Both of them were offering me a cage. I did not reply to either of them. I reached my building. I stopped at the door. The air smelled wrong. It was not just the usual city smell of exhaust and trash. This was sharp, chemical, gasoline. I ran up the 3 flights of stairs, my heart pounding in my throat. My apartment door was open. My neighbor, Mr. Petrov, a retired firefighter in his 70s, was standing in my doorway, his pajamas soaked, a fire extinguisher in his hand. Nora, he yelled, his voice hoarse. Thank God, is the boy... Leo, I screamed, pushing past him. Leo was in his bed. He was not asleep. He was sitting straight up, his eyes wide, clutching his pillow. He was crying silently, tears streaming down his face. What happened? I grabbed Leo, pulling him into my chest. I smelled it. Mr. Petrov said, his voice shaking. Woke me up. I looked out the hall window, saw smoke by your fire escape. I ran to the window, still clutching Leo. The fire escape landing was black, charred. The window frame was blistered. Below, in the alley, our building's large plastic trash bin was a melted, smoking ruin. Someone piled the trash bags against the landing. Mr. Petrov said, coughing. They poured something on it and lit it. I heard them run. I grabbed my extinguisher and got it out just before it caught the window. My legs gave out. I sank onto the edge of Leo's bed, my arms clamped around him. Someone had tried to set my apartment on fire. They had targeted the fire escape, my only other way out. They had meant to trap us. It was scary, Mommy, Leo whispered into my shirt. The smell was so bad. I held him, my body rigid. This was not Evan. This was not Hale and Son. This was a message, a different kind of message. Cooperate, or you're not safe, or you burn. We could not stay there. I packed a small bag, Leo's toothbrush, a change of clothes, his favorite book about the planets. I grabbed my old violin case from the closet. It did not hold a violin anymore. It held our important papers, Leo's birth certificate, my social security card, the few bonds my grandmother had left me. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Leo asked, his voice small. "To the shelter," I said, my voice a strained whisper. "Just for tonight. It is safe there. We will have a sleepover in the office." I took him on the late-night bus to Somerville, my boss at the shelter. Sarah let us in the secure entrance without a single question. She saw the look on my face, the soot on my window, the terror in my eyes, and she just unlocked the staff room. She made Leo a small cot, gave him a cup of hot chocolate, and let him watch cartoons on the office computer. Once he was asleep. I stood by the reinforced window. Looking out over the quiet street, I felt like a mouse in a maze, and all the walls were closing in. I had to go back. I had to talk to the police about the fire. I had to face this. I took the T back to the north end. It was 3 a.m. The streets were dead quiet, washed in the yellow glow of the gas lights. I was walking toward my apartment building, trying to build up the courage to go inside, when I saw him. He was standing across the street, motionless under the steeple of the Old North Church. Adriano Russo. He was not looking at my building, and he was looking directly at me, and he was immaculate in a dark overcoat, his silver hair catching the light. In his gloved hand, he held his expensive fountain pen. As I watched, he raised it and slowly, deliberately, tapped it against his knuckle. 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, 2, 3, pause. He was not there by accident. He was not surprised to see me. He was watching, waiting. Had he been there for the fire? Had he ordered it? He just stared at me, his face impassive. He was not threatening. He was just a fact, a piece on the board, letting me know he saw me, letting me know he was there. I turned and walked away, my heart hammering so hard it hurt my chest. I could not run. I was being squeezed from every side. Evan and the court, hail and sun, and now this, the fire, the man in the shadows. I walked to an all-night convenience store and bought a cheap disposable phone with $20 in cash. I stood on the cold street corner and unwrapped it. I still had the card Luca Moretti had given me. My fingers, shaking, dialed the number. A smooth, professional voice answered on the first ring. Moretti Group. "I need to speak to Luca Moretti," I said, my voice barely audible. "This is Nora Bennett." I did not wait long, less than 10 seconds. "Nora." His voice was warm, calm, as if he were expecting my call. "I was hoping you would call." "Someone tried to set my apartment on fire tonight," I said. All the fear and rage boiled over, and my voice was flat and cold. My son was inside. There was a pause. The warmth in his voice vanished, replaced by ice. "Where are you?" "I am safe. He is safe. For now, but I need to talk to you." "I will send a car." "No." The word came out sharp, definitive. No cars, no back rooms, no favors. I was in control of this, at least. Tomorrow, 10 a.m, the main cafe at the Boston Public Library, in the courtyard. It is public. There are cameras. There are hundreds of people. Another pause. He understood. 10 a.m, he said. "I will be there." I went back to the shelter. I did not sleep. I sat in a hard plastic chair and watched my son breathe. The next morning, I took the T to Copley Square. The library courtyard was an oasis, full of stone and green vines. It was busy, just as I had planned. Students, tourists, older people reading newspapers. I felt the tremor in my hands, but I ignored it. He was already there, at a small iron table, a tiny cup of espresso in front of him. He wore a gray tweed jacket. He looked like a professor, not a gangster. I sat down. I put my hands flat on the table. They were not shaking. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Let us be direct," I said, my voice low. "My ex-husband filed an emergency motion to take my son. He's using the incident at the diner. The police, Detectives Hale and Son, are threatening to support his motion unless I cooperate against you. And last night, someone set a fire at my apartment, at my fire escape. Luca listened. His dark eyes never left mine. He did not look surprised. He just looked angry. When I finished, he nodded slowly. They are connected. I know. Someone, he said, leaning in, his voice barely a whisper, wants you to cooperate with the police very badly. So badly that they are willing to put you in an impossible position. They are using your son to get to you, and using you to get to me. It was not you. I said, it was not a question. The fire... No, he said, and his voice was cold steel. It was not. That is not how I operate. He reached into his jacket and placed a different business card on the table. It was heavy, cream-colored, the name of a lawyer, a woman, one of the biggest, most expensive names in Boston family law. This is one of the best family law attorneys in the city, he said. She will handle Evan. She will file a counter motion citing harassment and intimidation. She will bury that emergency motion before it ever sees a judge. It will all be handled. I stared at the card. It was a lifeline. It was an answer to a prayer I had been too afraid to voice. Anonymously, I asked? Completely. Her firm will take your case pro bono. Evan's lawyer will be outmatched, outsmarted, and outgunned. This was the solution. This was how I kept Leo. I pushed the card back across the table. No? He looked stunned, genuinely surprised. I do not understand. This is how you fix it. It is your solution, I said, my voice steady, my hands still flat on the table. It is a favor. It is a very, very big chain. I told you, I do not accept favors with chains. If I take this, I work for you. I am in your debt. I become just another person you protect. I will not trade one cage for another. I will not have my son's safety be your leverage. Nora, this is not a cage. This is help. Today it is help. Tomorrow, you will ask me to look the other way at the diner, or lie to the police, or worse. I will not. I will handle Evan myself. I will handle the police myself. And the fire, he asked, his voice sharp. Will you handle that yourself, too? The man who said it? I stood up. I came here to tell you to stop. Whatever this war you are in, you keep me and my son out of it. Tell your people. All of them, stay away. I turned and walked away from the table, leaving him with his espresso and his expensive lawyer. I walked through the high-arched hallways of the library, my head high, my stomach churning with acid. I had just refused the only help that could save me. I made it to the sidewalk on Boylston Street, the sun bright, the city noise overwhelming. That was a mistake. I spun. Detective Sun. She was standing right there, leaning against a stone pillar, as if she had been waiting for me. She must have followed me. Are you stalking me? We are conducting surveillance on a person of interest, she said, gesturing with her chin back toward the library. He met with you. Now you are part of that surveillance. She took a step closer. We saw that, refusing his help. Very noble, very stupid. My business with him is my own. No, Sun said, her voice flat, all pretense gone. It is not. You just refuse protection from the only person who can stop what is happening to you, which means you are desperate, and desperate people are useful to us. She looked at her watch. You have a choice. Nora, you refused his help today. That is fine, but you will not refuse ours. I'm not helping you. You will get a subpoena tomorrow. We are bringing you in, grand jury. You will testify about what happened in that diner. You will testify about the meeting you just had. You will testify about everything. And if you lie, that is perjury. If you refuse to talk, that is contempt of court, either one. And your custody hearing is over. You lose Leo, permanently. She held up 2 fingers. 48 hours. That is your deadline. You either come to us, voluntarily, and you cooperate, and we make this custody problem disappear. Or we make you disappear into the legal system. Your choice. She did not wait for an answer. She turned and walked away. merging into the Boston crowd, leaving me alone on the sidewalk, trapped. The mob on one side, the police on the other, and the law in the middle, all of them holding a match to the ropes that were holding my life and my son's together. The 48 hours Detective Sun had given me felt like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I had 2 days to either sell my soul to the police or lose my son to the legal system. I was still hiding with Leo at the shelter, telling him it was an extended sleepover, but his questions were getting sharper. He missed his bed. He missed his cotton ball nebulae taped to the ceiling. I needed my car. It was an old, rusted sedan I kept parked 5 blocks from my apartment for my shifts at the shelter in Somerville. It was cheaper than taking the T every day. I walked to it on a gray, windy afternoon. My keys clutched in my hand, my gaze sweeping the street. I felt naked, exposed. I knelt to unlock the driver's side door, which always stuck. As I did, something small and white, tucked just inside the wheel well, caught my eye. It was plastic, round and held in place by a powerful magnet, an Apple AirTag. My breath hitched. I ripped it off. It was anonymous, clean, simple. Anyone could have bought it. How long had it been there? Had they followed me to the shelter? To the library, did they know Leo's school route? My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I threw it as hard as I could into a nearby storm drain, where it clattered and was gone, but I knew it did not matter. They knew where I was. That night, my phone, the cheap burner, buzzed with a message from Maria, my coworker at the diner. "Nora, you need to see this." She sent a link. It was a video, posted on some local Boston gossip blog. It was the diner footage, but it was not the raw footage the college kids had. This was edited. It was cut to look intimate. It showed the drunk grabbing my apron. Then it cut to Luca standing up, his face intense. It cut to him moving between me and the knife, a heroic, slow-motion edit. It cut to me, my hand on his arm, pressing the tablecloth to the wound. They had zoomed in, making the gesture look tender, not medical. They cut out the part where I slammed the drunk's face into the table. They cut out the arrival of the police. The video ended with a still frame of Luca and me in the staff room, just talking, the image grainy. The headline read, "North End Waitress and Mob Boss Lover in Violent Diner Brawl." Lover. My stomach heaved. This was what Evan's lawyer was seeing. This was what the judge would see. This was what Child Protective Services would see. The call came the next morning, a crisp, bureaucratic voice from the Department of Children and Families. "Miss Bennett, we've received a formal complaint. We need to schedule an in-home evaluation with you and your son, Leo." "A complaint," I whispered, my voice hollow. "From who?" "That information is confidential. Ma'am, we are required to investigate all claims of child endangerment. The motion filed by Mr. Carter's legal team cites exposure to violence and individuals involved in organized crime." I scheduled it, my voice numb. I had 48 hours. I called my ex-husband. He picked up on the second ring, his voice smooth and confident. "Evan, you have to stop this. You know this is a lie. You know I am not." "What I know, Nora," he interrupted, his voice cold, "is that you are reckless. I saw the video. Everyone has seen it. My lawyer, he's very, very good. He's one of the best in the city. I had looked him up. A man who charged over $1,000 an hour. Evan could not afford that. Not on his own. Who is paying for him? Evan, I asked, the realization dawning. Who is giving you the money to do this? There was a pause. A tiny, almost imperceptible hesitation. "My stability is my own concern," he said stiffly. "This is what is best for Leo. A judge will see that. Goodbye, Nora." The line went dead. Money was being pumped into Evan's case. Money from someone who wanted me squeezed, someone who wanted me to cooperate with the police or to run into Luca's arms for protection. I felt the walls. They were on every side. That night, I had to work. I could not hide. I needed the tips. I needed the semblance of normalcy. I took the T, the Green Line, heading downtown. It was raining hard. The windows of the train streaked with water, blurring the city lights. The car was mostly empty. It was late. After the dinner rush, I sat near the door, my old violin case on my lap. At the Boylston stop, 2 men got on. They were unremarkable. Dressed in dark jackets, nondescript, they did not look at me. They sat at opposite ends of the car. The doors closed. The train lurched forward. At the next stop, Arlington, they both stood up. They moved toward me. I stood, my heart leaping into my throat. The case felt heavy in my hands. Yahi. One man stood directly in front of me. The other stood behind. They were blocking the doors. Miss Bennett, the first man said. He was not looking at me. He was looking just past my ear. You should have taken the help. I do not know what you are talking about, Mal-Ie, I said, my voice trembling. The lawyer, the fire. You are making bad choices. The second man whispered from behind me. Detective Hale is not a patient man. He wants what he is owed. So, they were Hale's men, not Moretti's. They were here to deliver the final warning. The doors opened. They both took a step toward me, crowding me, pressing me back against the pole. You are going to cooperate, Ware, the first man said, his hand moving inside his jacket. And then a different voice cut through the air. Leave her alone. A black sport utility vehicle was idling at the curb, its headlights cutting through the rain. The passenger door was open. Rafe Conti was leaning out. He was not in his usual tight suit. He was in jeans and a black hoodie, his hair wet from the rain. He looked annoyed. He looked like he had been pulled away from something far more important. The 2 men on the train froze. They looked at Rafe. They looked at the driver of the SUV, a silhouette, and they looked at me. Their faces, so confident a second ago, were now pale with fear. They knew who Rafe was. Get in the car, Rafe yelled at me, his voice sharp with impatience. Now you are exposed. The 2 men who had cornered me practically fell over themselves, stumbling off the train and disappearing into the night. They ran. I hesitated. This was the one man in Luca's orbit I did not trust. Do you want to wait for them to come back? Rafe snapped. Get in. It is an order. I ran through the rain, my violin case held over my head, and dove into the SUV. Rafe pulled the door shut, and the car accelerated smoothly into traffic, the inside silent and warm. You should not be on the T, Rafe said, not looking at me. He was staring out the window, his jaw tight. That was stupid. He said you were smart. Where are you taking me? Somewhere safe. He wants to talk to you. The safe house was not a penthouse. It was a nondescript apartment in a luxury building overlooking the harbor. The wind howled off the water, rattling the floor-to-ceiling windows. The place was sterile, minimalist, and had the feel of a place no one ever lived in. Luca was not there. A woman was sitting in a large armchair, looking out at the stormy water. She was older, elegant even in a simple knit shawl. A cane rested against the chair. As I entered, she turned. Her face was kind, lined with intelligence, and her hands, resting on the arms of the chair, were shaking. Not a tremor like mine, a slower, more pronounced Parkinson's tremor. Nora Bennett, she said. Her voice was steady, clearer than I expected. I am Teresa Moretti. My son sends his apologies. He was detained. She gestured to the chair opposite her. Please, sit. You look half drowned. I sat. I placed my violin case on the floor. You brought your music, she observed, a small smile playing on her lips. No, I said. Just papers. My son's birth certificate, my passport. I have not played in years. My hands. I know, she said, holding up her own. These traitorous things. My son told me about you, about your hands. He notices things like that. He has had to, with me. She poured tea from a silver pot into a delicate china cup. Her tremor made the cup rattle in the saucer, a sound I knew well. She did not apologize for it. She simply set the cup down in front of me. He wants to protect you, she said quietly. Protection is a cage, I said, my voice hard. I told him. Teresa Moretti looked at me, her eyes sharp and deep. Protection is not a chain, Nora, not unless you forget to keep the key. She tapped her own temple. The key is here. You are a smart girl. You have survived this long. You know the difference between a hand offered to help you up and a hand offered to pull you down. My son is offering to help you up. The men on the train. They are pulling you down. I drank the tea. It was hot, and it stopped my own shaking for a minute. We sat in silence until Luca arrived an hour later. He looked tired. His coat was damp. He dismissed Rafe with a nod and then came to stand by the window, looking down at the harbor. Teresa, would you give us a moment, he asked. His mother stood slowly, using her cane. She paused by my chair and placed her trembling hand on my shoulder. Remember the key, she whispered. And then she was gone. You were followed, Luca said. Hale's men. They are getting desperate and sloppy. They are squeezing me. CPS. The video. Evan's lawyer. They gave me a deadline. 48 hours. I know, he said. I know about all of it. How? It does not matter. I told you I would not let this become a yoke, but I also will not let them destroy you to get to me. So what now? I asked. You put me in a car, you hide me here, and you handle it, you make my problems go away. And then, what do I owe you? Luca, what is the price? He turned from the window. His face was serious. There is no price, but there is a choice. I cannot fix this if you fight me, but I will not fix it for you. We will fix it together, but you have to set the terms. I looked at him. He was not Rafe, hungry for power. He was not Adriano, hiding in the shadows. He was the man who had stood up in the diner. Teresa's words echoed in my head. Keep the key. Okay, I said. My terms. 3 of them. He nodded. Go on. 1. You do not interfere with my custody case. No threatening Evan, no paying off judges. Nothing unless I ask you to. Unless I say the words. It has to be my call. Agreed, he said without hesitation. 2. My son, Leo, he knows nothing. He does not see Rafe. He does not see this apartment. He does not know your name or what you do. He only knows Mr. Luca, who runs a community fund. That is it. He will be protected, Luca said, and he will be ignorant, I promise. 3, I said, my voice hardening. If I call, you come. If I text need help, you do not send Rafe. You do not send someone else. You show up. That is the deal. I will not be your pawn, but I will not be your enemy. I will be an ally. But on my terms. He held out his hand. His was steady. Mine was not. On your terms, Luca said. Ally. I like that. I did not take his hand. I need to understand what we are fighting. You are fighting Hale and Son. I am fighting someone else, someone who is using them, someone who is paying Evan's lawyer, someone who wants me off the board so he can take my place. Adriano Russo, I whispered. Luca's eyes narrowed. You are smart. Yes, Adriano. My father's consigliere. He thinks my way. The funds, the charity, the legal shell, Colleen is weak. He wants the old ways, and he is using you, the police, and my family's name to set a trap for me. How? He knows everything, I said, the AirTag flashing in my mind. He knew about the CPS call. He must have known my route on the T. He has someone in the system, Luca said, his voice grim. A leak inside the Boston Police Department or the courts. Someone who is feeding him every move we make and every move you make. A cold dread settled over me. We were not just fighting a man. We were fighting a ghost in the machine. I went back to the shelter to get Leo. Luca had men I could not see, shadow me all the way. We spent the night at my apartment, the smell of gasoline still faint in the hallway. A new deadbolt was on my door. I had not put it there. The next night, I was at the shelter. It was my shift. Leo was with a babysitter, a woman from the shelter I trusted. It was quiet, just me and the night security guard, a man named Marcus. And then I smelled it. Not the faint, old smell from my apartment. This was fresh, pungent. Gasoline. "Marcus!" I screamed. I ran to the back door, the one leading to the donation alley. Smoke was curling under the door. Marcus grabbed an extinguisher. I called 911. I ran to the main floor, my heart exploding. Fire, fire. We got everyone out, the 10 women, the 4 children. We got them across the street, huddled in blankets. Marcus and I went back, fighting the flames that were now eating the donation room. It was thick with acrid smoke. I saw the empty red gas can just inside the door, right before the heat drove us back. We put it out before the fire department even arrived. It was contained, but the damage was done. The donation room was destroyed. The next day, the newspaper said faulty wiring. I knew better. I had smelled the gasoline. This was Adriano. He had not just targeted me. He had targeted the shelter, my second job, my safe place. He was burning down my life, piece by piece. I met Luca that afternoon in the public garden. The swan boats were packed away for the winter. "He targeted the shelter," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Women, children, He does not care." "No," Luca said. "He does not. He sees it as your weakness. So he burns it." "We have to stop him." "We will," Luca said. "He has a weakness, too. Pride. He loves to be seen in the right places. The Boston Symphony is having its winter gala, a charity event. He never misses it." "A gala," I said. "What good does that do?" "He will be there. Hale will be there. His whole network. And you have a background in music. Do you not?" He knew about the conservatory. He knew about the violin. "I'm a waitress. Luca?" "You can be a waitress anywhere," he said. "The gala needs catering staff. You can be there. You can be invisible. You can be my eyes. Nora, you can hide in plain sight." I did not like it. It was a trap. "I will think about it," I said. I went to my shift at the diner. I had to pay the babysitter. My hands were on fire, the tremor so bad I could barely hold a pen. I was wiping down the counter, trying to breathe, when Detective Hale walked in. He did not sit. He stood by the door, talking on his phone, his voice low. I was close enough to hear him. "The gala is the target," Hale said into his phone. "Is our man in position?" "Good. Make sure you get Nora inside. I want her where we can see her." He paused, listening. Then he laughed. "Do not worry. I will be there." I froze. He wanted me at the gala. Adriano wanted to be at the gala. They were all converging. Then I heard a tinny voice reply through Hale's phone. It was distorted, but it was not Luca. It was not Evan. It was no one I knew. "I am already in," the voice said. Hale clicked off his phone, saw me watching, and gave me a cold, thin smile. "See you soon, Nora," he said, and walked out. I stood there, my dish rag dripping onto the floor. A setup, a trap, and I was the bait. But who was the trap for me or Luca? Or was there a third player, a man already inside, a man who was not Detective Sun, a fake cop, an inside man? I pulled out my phone. I sent a text to Luca. "I am in." The grand hall at Symphony Hall was a sea of warm, yellow light. It was a world I had once dreamed of belonging to, a world of heavy crystal chandeliers, the scent of expensive perfume, and the rich, polished smell of old wood. Now, I was just part of the scenery, an invisible cog. I wore a starched black shirt, black trousers, and a server's apron. My tray was loaded with champagne flutes, the bubbles catching the light. My hands were a disaster. The tremor was a high, frantic vibration. Fueled by adrenaline and fear, I gripped the heavy silver tray with both hands, bracing it against my hip. "Breathe, Nora, do not spill, do not drop, do not be seen." I navigated the clusters of guests, women in gowns that cost more than I made in 6 months, men in tailored tuxedos. Across the room, near the grand staircase, Luca Moretti stood talking to the mayor. He wore a tuxedo as if he had been born in it. He looked completely at ease, a man who belonged, for a fraction of a second. His dark, calm eyes met mine. It was not a smile. It was an acknowledgement. Then he seamlessly returned to his conversation. Further on, by a large marble column, Rafe Conti looked like he was about to climb out of his own skin. He fidgeted with his bow tie, his expensive suit looking more like a cage. He was pretending to scan the crowd, but his gaze was electric, impatient. He was a predator, waiting for the hunt to begin. He wanted this to be over. And then I saw him, Adriano Russo. He was standing near the orchestra, which was tuning for the main performance. He held a program, and in his right hand was his expensive fountain pen. He was tapping it against his knuckle, a quiet, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. Pause. He was anticipating something. He was energized. Tucked into the seam of my shirt, right by my collarbone, was a microphone. It looked like a tiny black button. The wire was taped to my skin, cold and unfamiliar, running down my back to a small transmitter in my apron pocket. It was Luca's one, non-negotiable condition. I need to hear what you hear. Nora, I need him to hang himself with his own words. I moved through the crowd, my server's smile pasted on my face. Champagne, champagne, ma'am. I was near the bar, setting down my empty tray, when a voice spoke directly behind me, a voice that stopped my heart. Nora? I went rigid. The glasses on the bar next to me seemed to vibrated with the shock. I turned, slowly. Evan Carter, my ex-husband. He was standing there in a rented tuxedo that was slightly too large in the shoulders. His face was pale, and a sheen of sweat covered his upper lip. Evan, I whispered. My voice was hoarse. What are you doing here? I was invited, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room, terrified. He was completely out of his element. Who invited you? He leaned in. He smelled of mouthwash and fear. Listen to them, Nora, please. Just do what they want you to do, my lawyer said. He said the court does not look kindly on women who are mixed up with mafia types. He said they will take Leo. It was a confirmation, a cold, hard spike of betrayal driving into my chest. He's paying you, I said, my voice flat. Adriano Russo. He's paying for your $1,000 lawyer. He paid for this tuxedo. He paid for you to come here and threaten me. Evan's eyes went wide. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. Nora, you do not understand. These are not people you say no to. Just take Leo and go. Disappear. He said, tonight is the end of it. For everyone. Get your hand off me, what I hissed. He let go, his own hand shaking. He looked past me, toward Adriano, his face slick with panic. I'm just trying to protect my son. He is my son, I snapped. Evan flinched, then turned and dissolved back into the well-dressed crowd. My rage was so cold it burned. He had sold us. He had traded his son's safety for a high-priced lawyer and a single night of feeling important. I turned, my hands shaking so violently I had to clench them into fists. I stumbled away from the bar, needing air, needing to escape. I walked right into a wall of expensive wool. Miss Bennett. Adriano Russo smiled down at me. It was a thin, dry, reptilian smile. Our brave waitress. Such remarkable balance, carrying that heavy tray with your condition. Excuse me, sir, I muttered, trying to push past him. A moment, he said. His hand, polite but firm, closed on my elbow. There is a small matter I need to discuss with you, in private. He did not wait for my answer. He steered me, his grip like steel, away from the crowd, toward a heavy oak door marked Musician Access Only. He pushed it open and guided me inside. We were in a backstage hallway, and he pushed me into a smaller room. It was filled with the ghosts of music, huge, coffin-shaped cases for string basses, smaller black cases for violins and cellos. The air smelled of wood rosin, old velvet, and polish. It was dead quiet. The sound of the gala was just a dull, rhythmic throb through the thick walls. Adriano let go of my arm. The door clicked shut behind us. I heard the sound I had been dreading, the sharp metallic turn of a key in the lock. My heart stopped. "A pity," Adriano said. He was perfectly calm, standing in the center of the room. He tapped his pen against his thumbnail. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. "You have those shaking hands, but you managed to keep your balance. It is too bad your life is about to slip right out from under you." "What do you want?" "Adriano," I kept my voice as low and steady as I could. The mic, it had to be recording. He chuckled. "I want to restore order. Luca is weak. He is sentimental. He sees his mother's condition in you. He thinks kindness is a strategy. It is not. It is a liability. It is a sickness. And I am the cure." He took a step closer. I took a step back, my gaze darting around the room. "You set the fire," I said, "at my apartment, at the shelter." "Crude, I admit," he said, adjusting the cuff of his shirt, "but effective. They were designed to push you toward the police, to make you a cooperating witness against Luca. But you ran to him instead. You complicated my plans, and now you are simply a loose end." My eyes scanned the room, instrument cases, stacks of sheet music, and in the far corner, a small folding table. On it sat an electric kettle, a few ceramic mugs, and a box of tea for the musicians. Above that table, on the ceiling, was a small, round, red sensor, a heat alarm. "So you are going to kill me," and I said, my voice shaking, "here at the symphony." "Do not be dramatic," he scoffed. "I'm not a butcher, but in a few moments this room will be compromised, a terrible accident. The police will find you. They will assume you were Luca's mistress, caught in the crossfire, a tragic, predictable end." I moved sideways, my feet shuffling, edging toward the table with the kettle. "You will not get away with it. Luca knows. He's not stupid." "Luca knows nothing," Adriano snapped. His voice was suddenly loud, brittle with anger. "He's a child playing philanthropist with his father's money. He's weak, and he is finished." I was there. I was at the table. I put my hand on the kettle. It was hot. The red light was on. The musicians must have been using it. "You're right," I said. "He's just a boy." And with all my strength, I grabbed the kettle and tilted it, pouring the scalding, steaming water straight up into the air. The cloud of steam hit the sensor. For one long, terrible second, nothing happened. Adriano just watched me, a look of confusion on his face. Then the alarm was a physical blow, a deafening, high-pitched scream that filled the small room. A red strobe light began to flash. Adriano's face contorted in pure rage. "You foolish!" He was cut off by a sharp hiss from the ceiling. The sprinklers. A sudden, shocking deluge of icy, chemical-smelling water rained down on us. The room was instant chaos. The water was freezing, plastering my hair to my face in seconds. Adriano roared in frustration, wiping the water from his eyes. After tonight, he screamed over the piercing alarm, his mask of civility completely gone. "Moretti will just be a name in an obituary. I am taking it all back. I am taking... Night." The locked door burst open, splintering the frame. Luca Moretti stood in the doorway, soaked to the skin, his tuxedo dripping. His calm was gone. His eyes were black holes of fury. "Adriano!" he yelled. Before Adriano could even move, two more figures shoved past Luca. "Police, freeze!" It was Detective Hale, and with him, a woman in a police jacket, her gun drawn, Detective Sun. But something was wrong. Her face was harder. Her eyes were different. As she stepped into the room, my phone, in my waterlogged apron pocket, vibrated. This was it. This was the trap. "Get him!" Hale shouted, pointing not at Adriano, but at Luca. The woman who looked like Sun moved with lightning speed, but Rafe Conti was faster. He had followed Luca. He burst into the room, his own gun already in his hand, pointed directly at Adriano. "Drop it, old man," Rafe snarled. "What?" The fake Sun did not go for Adriano. She spun and lunged at Rafe, grabbing his wrist with both hands. "Police, drop the weapon!" It was a blur. Rafe, stunned, fought her. The fake Hale drew his gun and aimed it at Luca. I was still holding my silver serving tray. I threw it with all my strength. The heavy tray spun like a discus, hitting the fake Hale square in the face. He staggered back with a grunt, his gun firing. The sound was deafening. The bullet went wide, sparking off the concrete floor. At the exact same moment, my phone vibrated again. I ripped it out of my pocket. The screen was wet, but I could read the text. It was from the real detective's son. "I am not there. Hale is not on duty. It is a trap. Get out." The woman impersonating son had ripped Rafe's gun from his grasp. She was turning, leveling the weapon not at Adriano, but at Luca. I did not think. I leaped to... I grabbed her wrist with both my hands, the hands that always shook. I grabbed the gun and I pushed. I pushed with all my weight, all my fear, all my anger. I aimed the gun down at the floor, away from Luca, away from me. Her fingers squeezed the trigger. The explosion was a deafening blast. The bullet tore through the wooden floorboards, inches from my foot. The recoil slammed my arms. "You!" Adriano screamed. He was not looking at me. He was staring at the two fake cops, who were now struggling with Rafe and Luca. "You were supposed to arrest him. You were supposed to frame him." He was apoplectic, his perfect plan dissolving in sprinkler water. He jabbed a trembling, furious finger at me. She heard it all. It does not matter, is the transfer record for Evan Carter enough? Is the wiretap on the diner enough to put Luca Moretto away? He was screaming at the fake Hale, and the tiny mic on my shirt, still broadcasting, was catching every single priceless word. Luca, in one fluid motion, broke free from the fake Hale, slamming an elbow into the man's throat. He looked at Adriano, his face a mask of cold victory, and he smiled. "Yes, Adriano," Luca said, his voice quiet, but carrying over the scream of the alarm. "It is more than enough. Thank you for confirming." Adriano's face went white. He understood. The mic. The trap was not for Luca. It was for him. And then, from the hallway, a new sound, not the fire alarm, a new, rising wail. Real police sirens, loud, converging on the building. Adriano did the only thing a rat can do. He ran. He shoved past the terrified musicians who were now crowding the hallway, and he disappeared into the chaos of the evacuation. "Get him," Luca yelled at Rafe. Rafe, his face grim, scrambled to his feet and sprinted after him, a blur of motion. The fake Hale and the fake son were already gone, vanishing into the panicked crowd. It was just me and Luca, standing in the flooded, ruined instrument room. The alarms were still screaming. The cold water was still pouring down. He grabbed my arm, his grip hard, pulling me close. His eyes, dark and intense, locked on mine. "Go home, Nora," he commanded, his voice raw. "Get Leo. Lock your door. Do not talk to anyone." "But the police..." "I will handle the police," he said. "I will handle all of it. Go. Keep Leo safe. That was your deal." He pushed me toward a side emergency exit, away from the main lobby, away from the arriving police cars. Go. I ran. I ran out into the cold, wet Boston night, my clothes soaked, my heart hammering, the sound of the sirens and Adriano's confession ringing in my ears. I had held onto my key, and I had just unlocked the cage. I ran. I did not stop running until my lungs burned and the sound of the sirens was a distant, confused wail behind me. I got back to my apartment, my clothes still dripping sprinkler water. Leo was asleep, the babysitter reading a magazine. I paid her, my hands shaking so badly I could barely count the bills. I locked the new deadbolt Luca had installed. I locked the chain. I sat on the floor by Leo's bed and I just shook. The next morning, the city was on fire with the news. Not a real fire, but a media one. The Boston Symphony Gala incident. They They called it a possible gas explosion in a utility room. They called it a chaotic evacuation. There was no mention of gunfire, no mention of fake police officers, no mention of Adriano Russo. The Moretti name was nowhere to be found. The story had been contained, scrubbed, and polished before the sun even rose. I felt a cold dread. Had it all been for nothing, had Adriano simply escaped, his confession lost in the noise. My burner phone rang at 10 o'clock. It was Luca. His voice was calm, tired, and all business. "It is done, Nora." "Done what is done." The news said it was a gas leak. "The news is what we allow it to be," he said. "The audio recording you made was perfect. It was definitive." Adriano. He did not get far. Rafe caught him at a private airfield trying to board a jet. Rafe had a minor injury, a sprained wrist from the fight with the woman, but he will be fine. More importantly, he also apprehended one of the men Adriano hired, the one who posed as a police officer with Hale. My breath hitched. The one who looked like Sun. "He was a former private military contractor," Lucas said. "He and his partner, the one who posed as Hale, were on Adriano's private payroll. Their testimony, combined with the recording of Adriano confessing to setting the fires and paying Evan, was given to the United States Attorney this morning, not the Boston Police, a different, cleaner channel." "And Detective Hale?" I asked, thinking of his cold smile in the diner. "Detective Hale," Mia Lucas said, his voice hardening, "was a real police officer. He was corrupt. He was the leak. He was feeding Adriano information from the precinct. Everything from your complaints to the official investigation into my family. He was arrested by his own department, the real detective's son leading the internal affairs investigation, less than an hour ago. He was the one who arranged for the fake cops to be at the gala, to arrest me, to plant evidence, all on Adriano's orders. It was all unraveling, the whole spider web. My ex-husband and I whispered, "Evan." The wire transfer records from Adriano's shell company to Evan's lawyer were included in the file. Lucas said, "The district attorney is pursuing charges of bribery, perjury, and custodial interference. Your emergency motion, Nora, it is gone. Child Protective Services dropped their case against you this morning, citing malicious intent on the part of the complainant. You won. Leo is safe." I sank onto my couch, the phone pressed to my ear. I was crying, silent, heavy tears of pure, unadulterated relief. I had my son. I was not going to lose him. You said Rafe caught one of the fake cops," I said, wiping my face. "Yes. The contractor. His confession was very thorough. Adriano's goal was twofold. His primary plan was to frame me, to have me arrested at the gala by fake police, making it look like a legitimate bust and causing my family to lose faith in my leadership. But he had a backup plan. You, me. He wanted to break me using my humanity point musty, as he called it. He saw me stand up for you in the diner. He saw me notice your tremor. He assumed you were my weakness. He paid Evan. He set the fires. He sent Hale. All to pressure you. He hoped to either force you to become a police informant, which would discredit you and me, or to force me into a violent public rescue, which would prove his point that I was just a common thug, not a legitimate businessman. My God, I whispered. "Whoa, he underestimated you." "Nora," Lucas said. "He never imagined you would be the one to set the trap, and he certainly never imagined you would be the one to hold a gun." My hand, the one not holding the phone, began to shake. "I have to go," I said. "Nora," he said, his voice softer. "I will be at the seaport by the water in 1 hour if you want to talk." He did not command. He offered. I found myself agreeing. I met him at the embankment. The wind was sharp, smelling of salt and cold water. He was not in a suit. He was in jeans and a dark wool coat, the one he had worn in the diner. He had a new one. We stood, not looking at each other, watching the gray water. "So you won," I said. "You got your rival. You cleaned your house." "We won," he corrected. He turned to me. "I'm not going to lie to you. Adriano is gone. My position is secure. That is good for me. But the threats against you are also gone. Hale is in a cell. Evan is facing his own crimes. The system is no longer pointed at you." "And the price?" I asked. "What is my price now?" "There is no price." "I do not believe you. I have your recording. I helped you set the trap. I am complicit." "You are a victim," he said firmly. "You are a victim who fought back. You saved my life at that gala. Any debt that existed is paid. You are free, Nora." He took a step closer. "But freedom does not always mean safety. I made a promise. I can pull everything back. My men, my influence. You will never see me again, or I can keep you and Leo safe, invisibly. No interference, no yoke. The terms you set, I will honor them. It is your choice." I looked at him, at the man who had stood up in the diner, at the man who understood tremors. "Keep your promise, Luca," I said. "Keep him safe." He nodded once. "I will." Life, very slowly, began to resemble normalcy, but it was a new normal, a version of my life seen through a fractured lens. I went back to work at the diner. My boss, Sal, was a wreck. He was pale, jumpy, and his books were open on the counter when I walked in. "Nora," he said, not meeting my eye. I heard you had some trouble." "You could say that." "Listen, Ma," he said, gesturing to the spreadsheets. "The Internal Revenue Service is here. They are auditing me. They said they got an anonymous tip about undisclosed contributions." I looked at him. "Contributions like the ones in the envelopes Adriano Russo's men dropped off here every week." Sal's face went white. "I did not know. I thought it was just, support for the neighborhood. He said it was to support the business." "He was paying you, Sal, paying you to let Hale sit in that back booth, to let them watch me. You were part of it. I did not know about the fires or your kid. But you took the money," I said, untying my apron, "and now you are paying the price." I left it on the counter and walked out. I could not work there anymore. I focused on the shelter. With Adriano gone, the anonymous donations that had been paying his people had stopped, but a new one had appeared, a very large, very anonymous grant to the shelter's building fund, earmarked for a new fire suppression system and security upgrade. It came from something called the Teresa Moretti Parkinson's Foundation. Teresa herself called me a few days later. "Nora, my dear, I heard you left that dreadful diner. Good for you. I was wondering if you would come to the house for tea, and perhaps to play for me." I went. The large house in Brookline was quiet. Luca was not there. It was just me and Teresa, in a room filled with sunlight and old furniture. My old violin case was already there, sitting on a table, not the one with my papers, my real one. I did not ask how he had gotten it from my parents' house, where it had been gathering dust for years. "I do not play anymore," I said, my voice quiet. "My hands—" "Your hands are alive," she said, holding up her own. "They shake. Mine shake. It means we are living. Nora, it is not a weakness. It is a sign of life. Play for me." I opened the case. The smell of rosin and old, polished wood hit me. A punch of memory. I picked up the instrument. It felt strange, foreign. I put the bow to the strings. My hand was shaking. The note was a thin, scraping wail. "Again," she said gently. I took a breath. I settled the violin under my chin. I closed my eyes. I let the tremor happen. I did not fight it. I let my arm move. I played. It was Bach. Simple. Then, I played the Ave Maria. The notes were not perfect. My vibrato was uneven, colored by the tremor. But it was music. It was my music. It was coming from me. When I finished, Teresa was smiling, tears in her eyes. "You see," she whispered, "shaking is not falling. Shaking is living." The final piece of the puzzle came a week later. A call from the real detective's son. She asked me to come to the precinct to give a final, formal statement. I sat in a bright, clean interview room. Just me and her. She was professional, kind, and her eyes held a profound sadness. "Adriano Russo is facing multiple federal charges," she said. "Hale is cooperating fully in exchange for a lesser sentence. We have a clear picture, but we need your part. We need the official record of what you saw, what you heard." I sat there for 2 hours. I told her everything. I told her about the diner, the knife, the first meeting with Luca. I told her about the police pressure. I told her about Evan's lawyer. I told her about the fire at my apartment and the fire at the shelter. I told her about the gala, the fake cops, the locked room, and the confession. I did not lie. I did not omit. I told the truth. But I did not paint Luca as a hero, and I did not paint him as a villain. I painted him as a man who had stood up when no one else would. I painted him as a man who had offered help and who, in the end, had respected my terms. I did not give her the recording. I told her I did not have it. I gave her my memory. When I finished, Sun closed her notebook. "You have been through an incredible trauma. Miss Bennett, your statement is very fair. It is the justice of a mother. You are not trying to win a war. You are just trying to protect your son." "I'm just trying to tell the truth," I said. She nodded. "Your ex-husband, Mr. Carter, he has pleaded guilty to perjury and bribery. He will likely serve probation, but his custody claim is permanently voided. You and your son are safe." I walked out of the police precinct into the bright, cold afternoon. I was a free woman. I was not a waitress. I was not a victim. I was not a witness. I was just Nora, a mother, a woman whose hands shook, and for the first time in a very long time, I was living. The court proceedings were a formality, a quiet echo of the chaos that had come before. Evan's emergency motion was dismissed with prejudice. He took his probation, his face pale and hollow. The judge granted him supervised visitation, once a month, at a neutral facility. He had lost, and he knew it. Leo and I moved out of the North End 3 weeks later. We found an apartment in Charlestown, on the top floor of an old brick row house. It was a place filled with sunlight. From our kitchen window, we could see the river, and his new school was only 2 blocks away. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I was unpacking a box of Leo's books when my burner phone rang. It was Luca. "I hear the new place is nice," and he said. "How did you hear that?" I asked, though I already knew. "I have my ways. Nora, I am calling about our arrangement." I paused. I thought our arrangement was finished. "Adriano is finished," he corrected. The threat from him, but the world is still the world. I would like to honor my promise. If you will let me, unbound protection. No visible men, no one parked on your street, just a number, a new number, a direct line. If you need anything, if you even feel unsafe, you call. That is it. No strings, no yoke. I looked out the window. Leo was in the small living room, setting up his cotton ball nebulae, taping them to the new, clean ceiling. He was happy. He was safe. On one condition, I said, "Name it. If you are ever in my son's life, if you ever see him at a park or a school event, you are Mr. Luca. You work in logistics. You help community centers. That is all he ever knows. That is the only story." "Logistics," he repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I can do that. Agreed." A week later, I heard through the grapevine of the city that Rafe Conti was not, as expected, promoted to Adriano's old position. He was not rewarded for his loyalty or for the capture. Instead, Luca had assigned him to 6 months of community service, managing the day-to-day operations of the new security installations at the Somerville Women's Shelter. It was Luca's way of teaching him. A cool head, a strategic mind was more valuable than a quick gun. Rafe was learning patience, whether he liked it or not. I found a new job. Not at the diner. I could not go back. I found a morning job at a small cafe in Charlestown, one that smelled of fresh bread and good coffee, not old grease. It was quiet. The regulars were teachers, shipyard workers, and young families. I was pouring a coffee one morning. My hand, as always, was vibrating, but I had learned, over the years, to use the tremor as a guide, to anticipate the movement, to work with it. The dark liquid streamed into the mug, not a single drop spilling on the rim. An old man at the counter, a regular named Frank, smiled at me. "Your hands, dear," he said kindly. "They have stopped shaking." I smiled back at him. Placing the mug on the counter? No, they have not. I am just practicing keeping the rhythm. That afternoon, a package was delivered. It was small, heavy, and wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside, on a bed of velvet, was an old metronome. It was beautiful. The wood dark and polished, the mechanism intricate. The card attached was from Teresa Moretti. Her handwriting was shaky, but the words were firm. "Nora, so that when your hands shake, you can set the rhythm with your ears. Your music is your own. Never let it stop. Teresa." I set it on my mantel. I wound the key, and I let the steady, rhythmic click, clack, click, clack fill the silence of my new, sunny apartment. It was the sound of a new life, a new pace, my pace. I met Luca a month after we moved. It was my idea. I called him on the new number. We met at the public garden. It was a cold yet bright day. The swan boats were long gone. We bought 2 coffees from a cart and walked, just 2 normal people in a Boston park. "How is Leo?" he asked. "He is good," I said. "He loves his new school. He wants to build a rocket. He thinks he can get it to the moon." "He probably will." Luca smiled. "He has a smart mother." We walked in silence for a moment. "And your mother?" I asked. "How is she?" His smile faded, but his eyes were soft. "She is the same. The tremor is worse, but her mind is sharp. She loved the concert you gave her." "It was not a concert. It was just noise." "It was music, Nora," he said, stopping. He looked at me. "It was the most beautiful sound I've heard in that house in a long time." We stood there, the steam from our coffee cups rising in the cold air, the debt, the favor, the violence. It was all still there, a history between us. But it was not a chain. It was not a yoke. It was just the story of how we met, an ought that had not turned into an awe. I was on my way home from that coffee, feeling lighter than I had in years, when I saw him. He was standing outside the convenience store on my corner, the one I had used to buy the burner phone. It was the drunk from the diner. My blood went cold. I stopped. He saw me, and his face, usually bloated and red, went pale. He was sober, and he looked terrified. He walked toward me, his hands up. "Miss, wait, please." I did not move. "I know you," I said. I know. I'm here to... I wanted to apologize about that night at the diner. I was not myself. "You pulled a knife," I said, my voice hard. I know, and I am sorry. I did my time for it, but that is not all." He fumbled in his pocket, his own hands shaking with nerves, not a tremor. He pulled out a crumpled old cell phone. "I did not just do that, miss," he said, his voice a low, desperate whisper. I was paid to start trouble, not to stab anyone, just to yell, to grab you, to make a big scene. He said just to make a mess, to scare you." "Who paid you?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "I do not know." He unlocked the phone, his fingers clumsy, and showed me the screen. It was just a text, a number I did not know. "Look." He held it out. It was a text message, dated the day of the diner incident. "'Cause a scene with the waitress in the back booth. Be loud, be rough. Make sure people notice. $1,000. And it was followed by a digital deposit confirmation. $1,000, I whispered. It was all a setup. From the very first second, Adriano had seen Luca in that diner, had seen him watching me, and had set the entire terrible thing in motion. The drunk man was not an accident. He was the first domino. The drunk looked at me, his eyes full of pathetic, desperate truth. "I am sorry, miss. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. He just said to make a scene." I looked at his face, at the text, And then I looked up at the bright sky. The circle was closed. I left him there, standing on the corner, and I walked home. I stood in my new living room, the sun streaming in, painting the floor in light. Leo was at his small table, drawing a diagram of the solar system. The metronome on the mantel kept its steady beat. Click, clack, click, clack. My hand was resting on the back of Leo's chair. It was shaking. A steady, familiar vibration, the rhythm of my life. No one dared to help the shaking waitress. No one, until he stood up first. But after that, it was my turn. It was my turn to stand up. It was my turn to find my own balance, to set my own terms. It was my turn to keep the rhythm for my own life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from right now? Let me know in the comments. I would love to connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video. And if you enjoyed it, please support us by hitting that hype button. It helps more than you know and allows these stories to be heard by so many more.